Liquor Talk, another new episode starts now. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get them drinks poured up. Happy New Year, ladies and gentlemen. I am sorry for the wait. I know it is 13 days into 2026 and we're just now dropping an episode, but sorry for the wait. But joining me today, we got a lady here, an author here. She's the author of I Tried to Be Normal, but It Was Taken. She's hailing out of West Palm Beach, Florida. Yes, a part of Florida I need to visit. So, Miss Frannie Sheridan, how you doing today, Frannie?
Oh, I'm so excited to be on your podcast. I love your vibe, and it is the first podcast for me of this year. So, a momentous one to be, I'm sure. I'm excellent. I'm tickled that you're doing what you're doing. It's a big deal.
Yes, I'm glad somebody sees it as a big deal, and because we all strive to be different than normal. So tell us, let's get into it. Tell us about the book. I Tried to Be Normal, but It Was Taken.
Well, okay, so the title actually was also the title of a comedy show that I did years ago, but it was such a good title and people dug it so much. But I wasn't quite ready to embrace it as a memoir. And I Tried to Be Normal, but It Was Taken audio memoir is all about a look back at my life, but with the lens or the perspective of that every freaking thing, and I mean the good, the bad, and the ugly, was a gift. Because I really believe that. And of course, I didn't always, think that, and in hindsight is, it's all, you can't feel great about something if something cuckapoo is happening to you at the moment. But looking back, I do not regret anything that I experienced, even though it may have been something that, had I known better, I would have done better. So, none of what is normal. Like, first of all, that whole definition of what it is to be normal, it isn't normal. Somebody made that up. People make up and define when they want to categorize you or put you into a block because it makes them comfortable. So for many, many years, I was stuck in this belief that I had to care more about other people's opinions or evaluation of me than my own voice. And many of us are like that. And so what I have come to realize so blatantly is that other people's tension is not ours to manage. And that's really the basis of my book. It's about me taking care of my frequency, my vibration, my connection to the light, God, Goddess, or whatever you want to call it, the unified field of love, the big schnitzel in the sky. We are all that. And so it's a look back at my life, but like I said, with this perspective. And additionally, it's kind of like a memoir, because towards the end of the book, I talk about how rewriting our stories is the most important thing anyway. They say when you look back at your childhood, a lot of you don't actually even remember exactly. I mean, yes, of course, we remember certain things for sure. But things change over time. So for me, after I've been a memoirist as a solo show performer internationally for decades, and and I have a traditionally published memoir, an ebook in print on Amazon, ACX, and different platforms. That happened many years ago. I'm self-publishing this book, and the reason that I began to work as a memoirist was because I was brought up with a secret. So it was super, you can call it toxic. It was, they say you're as sick as your secrets. Well, it was paralyzing me in certain aspects of my life, personally and as a performer and as an author, yada, yada. So for me, it was super healthy to share my family secret. And I can get into that if you want, but and for many, many years I did this. The sort of the line to what I'm doing now with I Tried to Be Normal, but It Was Taken, I am no longer telling this, the story or the truth. I had healed from it. It was like very therapeutic, and cross-culturally, many people from many communities told me it resonated with them, because if you're living with a secret, it is just not it can be very crippling, in many areas of life. So it blew my mind how many people from so many different communities resonated with it. So it was super, super good for a while. And then going back into, dark aspects of my earlier life became really, really toxic. It was like ripping off a Band-Aid or a scab over and over. Once the healing I'd done with it, then it was no longer healthy for me to do that. I actually became unwell. And so I moved ahead and became an energy healer and took how I had healed myself. And then I began to share, my processes of how I was able to heal myself. And just some bullet points are from inherited post-traumatic stress disorder. My parents happened to be Holocaust survivors. I was brought up never to tell anyone we were Jewish. I was raised Roman Catholic because not only did they survive the war in Europe, but my dad was nearly killed in 1951 in Canada by an anti-Semite. Now, all this is documented, and the only way I was able to get a traditional publishing deal with my book, which was called Confessions of a Jewish Shiksa, it's still available, is because I got all of the legal paperwork and so forth. Because publishers just they won't publish you unless you have all that, right? But what it is now is I'm looking back at it, but without needing to go into the darkness, but just to say that everything was a gift. Because since I started doing this work, I have, as I said, I've worked as, you can call it an energy healer. I'm basically a person who helps people tell stories that are going to serve them. And because the stories we tell become the story of our life, right? The stories we tell become the story of our life. And so whether that means that I just sort of intuitively want people to reach for the light, the joy that we are, not stay stuck in misery. There's a time, if somebody dies or we're like going through some really hard time, yeah, we got to like get it out. But a lot of people, and I was one of them, I'm not above any of this, I stayed with this sort of energy in my body, and it becomes dis-ease, lack of ease. So together with looking back at the benefit of everything that I went through, I also share processes that allowed me and many, many of my beloveds and followers and whatever to heal themselves. So that's what I tried to be normal is, because I want to inspire people by my own particular way of looking at things and perspective. And some people aren't ready, and I love them anyway. It's there if, people are ready for it.
Yeah, that's real. Those are some real processes, and that's a lot to unpack. I know you said about caring about what people think. The book that changed my life was the book called The Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yeah.
Who wrote that name of that book? Named
Mm.
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. That changed my life. It got me to stop caring about what people think, because people's opinions don't pay your bills. At the end of the day, they don't do nothing for you. So
Nothing.
why people would care so much about caring about what someone else thinks is ridiculous, because it's 2026 out here. We got to get it how we live, and we got to understand that you cannot please everybody, because everybody is going to say something. You just got to deal with it. Take the good and call it a day.
Well, and I do have like my own 2 cents worth as to why we have been systemically, I don't like the word program because none of us are victims, but you know what I mean? We bought into why we should care more about other people's opinions than our own. And, I think it has to do with using shame and fear and guilt as sort of a manipulative tool. And sometimes from very well-intentioned parents or parental figures, and sometimes not, sometimes abusers, whatever, that, your voice doesn't matter. You do what I say, but sometimes from protective parents who are just overly protective, like mine were, right? And so your voice gets silenced. And then that thing inside of us, that self-doubt, the second guessing, and worse, just, I could not literally make eye contact with people like for a long time. I was, agoraphobic and all that kind of stuff, whatever label you want to give it. I just couldn't go there. But, palliative care workers, and I reference this at the end of my book, unanimously agree that the biggest regret that the majority of their dying patients have at the end of their lives is, I wish I hadn't cared so much what other people thought of me because I would have done so much more. I'm like, what a
Hmm.
thing to have to feel right before you bite it. You know what I mean? I know,
Yeah.
we come back and all that, but still, right? And so, yeah, but I'll tell you at the beginning of my journey with this, I was a stand-up comedian before I went into the kind of more, kind of more dramatic work. Let's just put it like that. And when I did, because it was a family secret, not because my parents are malicious or anything like that, but when you're brought up with a secret, and I'm the youngest, daughter in a family of 7 kids,
Oh,
good
wow.
Catholics, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, you know what I mean, right? And but here I was going to blow the secret when you're brought up, and it sounds like irrational, but when your parents are so terrified that you're going to be killed because they were not able to protect their families, and they had survivor guilt, and then my dad nearly got killed in Canada. I told you this whole story. So he was an extremely successful ophthalmologist and eye surgeon and all that, took really good care of us, but he was messed up. You know what I mean? And so, because when you live with that terror, you cannot just be. You can't just be. And yes, of course, there are justified reasons not to say certain things at certain times. I'm not being totally Pollyanna here, or anything like that. But if we can't be comfortable with who we are, then it infects kind of everything that you do. And so at first, when I decided to share my story as a solo full length play, sorry, I've got like a feather or something that just came out of and angels, just wait your turn. I'm in the middle of a very important interview here. So, they're so needy, those angels, I tell you. But anyway, my family threatened me with legal action, and it wasn't not everyone in my family. In case some of my sisters and brothers hear this, but my dad, who by then was retired, 86 years old, and living undercover as a Catholic, but he was really a Jewish Holocaust survivor. But he had in his native hometown, which is Vienna, Austria, and some of my other siblings, again, not out of malice, but because their little sister was going to blow the secret, which was supposedly keeping the family together, right? When you hear these, and that's the thing, is we become our stories. So that's why I, really want to inspire people to rewrite their juicy life story, not to negate history. No, no, no. And I'm never, ever condoning abuse at all. I'm saying at some point, I think we got to take take it by the reins and create the life that we want, regardless of what we've been through. And look at all these freaking heroes, who are you familiar with? I'm probably mispronouncing his last name, but Nick Vachowzik.
Who's that?
So he's this all the proper spelling. I'll send it to you after if you like. So he's this remarkable Australian man who was born without arms and legs, bullied, suicidal, the
Wow.
whole thing. But check this out: married a so-called normal or able-bodied woman, beautiful woman, has children, um, sells
How in
out
the world?
sells out stadiums. I'm serious. And who he mostly speaks to are young women who are dysmorphic. They have body images, right? There's this guy, no arms, no legs, and he's like gorgeous in a true sense. And I mean, he's really a handsome guy. And he bounces around on his body, and he makes fun. And what he said, this was one of his. I don't know if I'm going to do it justice because I can't remember the setup. But he said he's funny. Like he said, when I was little, I was, suicidal and bullied. And I was like, please, 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 God, give me arms and legs. And he said, but you know what? I'm really happy I don't have them now because you know what? I'm never going to get arthritis, and you guys are. Do you know he?
Wow.
Yes, this is what I mean. So if somebody like him can be such a light, come on, we can all step it up. And there's a time to have self-pity for sure, and there's a time to be, but I was really, really paralyzed in so-called PTSD, inherited PTSD. So I transformed that with my processes into what I coined PTJO, post-traumatic joy overload. And that's my jam.
That's amazing how you could turn trauma into joy overload. And so we're 15 minutes in, ladies and gentlemen. This is Liquor Talk. The more you drink, the better we sound. You know what, Franny? Franny, go ahead and tell the people what's this secret you've been hiding from the world. Let's just go ahead and give the listeners this secret. Hey, it's 2026. Hey, who's gonna do something if they hear the secret?
Who's gonna wait a second? I didn't understand what you said. Who's gonna do what with a secret? I think you
I
may have
mean,
cut
who's
out.
gonna do something by you telling the secret?
Who's gonna do something to you if you tell a secret?
Yeah, who's gonna do something to you if you tell the secret? Because it's like, I feel like nobody's gonna do anything to you if you reveal the
Right?
secret.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there were lawsuits threatened, and this was not when I first published. I have my first play was published in 1996,
Mm-hmm.
and it was before the internet, right?
Yeah.
I was born in the 1500s. I was born in the 1500s before the internet, and so when you're threatened with legal action, it's a drag because regardless of whatever actually transpired, the whole when you're brought up with terror, so many people are immobilized, right? By having to live lives according to what they've been told is the only way to live that's acceptable. And so those are secrets. There are many different levels of secrets, right? There are secrets that we barely want to admit the truth to ourselves of how we may have sabotaged ourselves in our lives because of certain limiting beliefs. There's many different things, but the secret that I had was so freeing. And here's the good news. My 86. Okay, so what happened? I'll just like encapsulate. So I did this play and I immediately got international press. And it was so wild, and the whole trajectory of my life changed. And old Hollywood came to me. You're probably too young to remember who this is, but this was a legendary film director who was the president of the American Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, Arthur Hiller. He directed Love Story and hundreds of films. And he was a little guy before the net who used to come out and because he was the president and introduced like the Oscars, the Academy Awards, with tons of hair, white hair. And I didn't know who he was, but he found me because I got so much press all of a sudden because people were gobsmacked. Like they wouldn't leave the theater after I performed my show because it was a real story. And I played all the parts in my family. You know what I mean? It was like a solo multi-character show. And so because I got that press and a lot more, and extended members of our family who had been searching for us. Like, okay, so here's what happened. My dad converted our family from Judaism to Catholicism, changed our family name from Siegel to Sheridan, went underground, forced my mother, who had a very strong bond with her religious practices, because her mother was killed on Kristallnacht, which means the Night of the Broken Glass in 1938. And this is all documented in lots of different books, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich and yada, yada, yada. But because of this, it was like the beginning of the end of their marriage. And because of my father literally, but there's a lot of dark humor in it because from the time I was a little girl, we went to church every Sunday, right? So, kids believe the way that they're raised, they believe it. Like I had no reason to doubt that we were, Roman Catholic. And we went to St. Basil's Church, but my parents, like they were Yiddish. My mom was from Germany. She talked like this. And my, dad was Viennese. So, they would be like, hello, Father O'Malley, to the priest, he must have known something was up. So good to be in church. And, so I never questioned it, but the whole thing was like very bizarre. And, and there was like something wrong with the picture. So my father didn't want didn't want to lose another family. When I say lose, he didn't want another family to be killed because his entire family had been killed during the Holocaust in Europe. And then he came over and he was nearly killed by anti-Semites in a small town called Moore, Saskatchewan, which is sort of like the American prairies, the Midwest. And you know, and again, this is all documented and stuff, but so he was messed up. He was like, his PTSD went, you know, full throttle, and he wanted to protect us, and I understand that. I I I totally get he did the best that he could, but that's how I was raised. So yeah, I mean, and the good news is that my dad sent me a letter of thanks, ultimately, for giving him the courage to come out as a Jew, which he did publicly in Vienna. And he happens to be. I'm not a person who is, you know, religious one way or the other. I'm all about the light. I'm all about love. I respect everybody's religion. I think at the core of every religion, there's light at the very core, without all the dogmatic stuff. But my father was, for him, it meant something to be buried in the Central Jewish Cemetery in Vienna, which is where he is. So he came out of the, you know, the knish. The knish is like a Jewish food, right? He came out of the knish closet, and he sent me this letter of thanks. So there's that was a real feather in my cap. Um, uh, that, you know, that he felt good about it, and he went from, you know, wanting to sue my butt to that.
Wow, that's amazing. He went from wanting to sue you to where now he's saying thank you to that. Also, shout out to them angels that always protecting, you know. They probably just had to make their presence felt. So how did you find the courage to share the family secret that you've been programmed to be
Right.
paralyzed with fear? And how did you find that courage to just say, forget this fear, I'm going to share this anyway?
Well, you know what? Like, I was stuck. Like, I didn't have the systematic, oh, I should, you know, what like, I majored in theater in university, did all these things. And I was very young. I was like 15 in my first year of university. And, and
Wow.
I had a lot of pressure. You know, people would see sort of my ability. We all come in with our different abilities. But then I would come up against these, you know, this stuff, and nobody knew what it was, and my directors were, you know, very frustrated. And then I started doing stand up, and I did really well. And the owner of, you know, a chain of clubs was like, you know, trying to really make me into like a star. And I had the, you know, private coach that he brought in. But I go into this, you know, paralysis, right? Because when it was really how we started out talking, it's a real arc, because, you know, other people's tension is not ours to manage. But when I was brought up to, if I questioned my father's authority because he was so scared that something was going to happen, he would actually threaten me with, not only, I mean, when I was a little girl, then this was obviously very abusive, but he would say, you know, I can have you institutionalized. I mean, this is terrible, right? But I mean, really crazy making. So I was terrified that if I was vulnerable on stage as a comedian or as an actress or whatever, that somehow being my authentic self was going to get me, you know, put away. Like, you know, and that to me was the scariest thing. Like, you know, or you know, or killed by Nazis or whatever, all of this terror. And so there was my father, you know, this genius eye surgeon who developed um, you know, surgery for glaucoma, an operation. And he was very, you know, and it's interesting because I performed my play in my hometown. Lots of his, hundreds of his patients came and told me how much they loved him, and they could not believe that this was the same person, right? And he was a very good man, but he was messed up at that time. There really wasn't a heck of a lot of trauma support.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of trauma support because I got people in my family, they were very messed up as well because there was no trauma support. Thank goodness for this generation. It's like we all got the
Yeah.
trauma support we need, and we need to take
Yes.
advantage of them resources, you know?
Oh, and there's so many things. So I call myself an in-betweener because, you know, like we meditate. Some people are into meditating in the morning and at night, you know, on average. And, or, you know, and there are lots of ways to handle stress. You know, you go to the gym, you work out, you ride your bike, you dance, you whatever. In between is when I have discovered I have, you know, worked with followers and clients for a long time now. And my family, my biological family, as well as, you know, my soul family, people, myself included, and I healed myself from all kinds of physical crap, plus my PTSD, through developing these very simple processes that are portable and free. And you can do anywhere, in the car, in the middle of the night when you can't sleep, you name it. Um, and so that helps to give us permission to calm the frick down so that our nervous system isn't dysregulated. And that's when people, road rage, end up in prison, dead, whatever, all this stuff. And it sounds very simplistic. Everything needs to be practiced. It's like going to the spiritual gym, dealing with spiritual speed bumps, if you will. But it needs to be practiced. It's not, I didn't automatically shift from being somebody who couldn't make eye contact with people or got so freaked out, doing stand-up comedy or performing in front of literally thousands of people. All of a sudden I'd be almost paralyzed where I couldn't connect to my breath. But these simple processes, when practiced, actually reprogram, rewire your body. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza and rewiring the brain. Well, this is all doable, but it takes practice. And just like any muscle, we got to work it. But these are the testimonials and the people that have said that these very, very simple things work is mind-boggling, and I love it. And this is like my passion now. The way that I figured this out wasn't because I was like, I have to figure out the in-betweener stuff. When I was meditating one morning, I started to hum. Also, at different parts of my life, different points in my life, I had hummed automatically. Autistic kids hum. A lot of the elderly automatically hum. This is something, and here's the thing. When I was humming, when I was meditating, I was annoyed because when you're meditating, you kind of want to stop thought, or at least, just kind of be there and feel your breath and all that. And I was like, why am I humming? I was like really irritated. And then I realized I was sort of receiving some energy, a frequency. And so I did a little bit of research, and it's ancient. A lot of indigenous tribes still use humming actually to communicate with non-physical. So when I was like blowing my mind, and you access on a scientific level nitric oxide. I mean, this is one of the best nervous system regulating things you can do. Now, I'm not talking about you just like like how kids do. So what I did is I found a way to use that energy in the most practical way. So like I can show you it's breathing in through your nose, right? Which, so you're basically activating your vagus nerve, and you're stimulated by what's going on in your nostrils without getting to, breaking down the data too much. And then if you hold your breath, carbon dioxide is activated. Holding it, like when I say hold your breath, I mean for a moment, just a moment. So you're like, and you hold your breath. And then when you hum, if you hum on the word home, not or but home, it has the most velocity. And I just discovered this by playing with it. And so what we do, like in our groups, and I go live on Facebook every Thursday at noon. I'm Frannie Sheridan on my page, and you can, all this is free. I just really want to share this with people. And on TikTok at 9 a.m. on Friday at the real AM at EST, the real Frannie Sheridan. And I share these processes. But all you do is that you breathe in, you hold your breath, carbon dioxide. Then when you're exhaling, home, for as long as you can on the word home, a couple things happen. Nitric oxide, right? This is like the best nervous system regulating pharmacy in town that's natural and free. And we do it ourselves. You do this a few times. There are so many people who can't sleep at night that I work with who do this, but you got to do it, right? You got to practice it. It's not like, and if you kind of do it half-ass, it's like, whatever. This stuff works. And so then you get in touch with the vibrations in your body, right? And your body becomes the most important. You're inhabiting your body. And so it becomes secondary what's going on around you, so that other people's stress, it no longer, not only is it not ours to manage, but it no longer impinges on you. You know what I mean? We've got our temple, we're rocking it, we're stable, and you can walk into a business meeting, an interview, a date, you're hanging with your in-laws, whatever, if there's something, you're driving and there are other drivers that are kind of crazing on the road, you won't get as swept in when you're connected to these vibrations. And so that's just one thing, but I'm telling you, it's exciting to me to be able to activate these, and my marriage has blossomed, and my husband and I now teach these, relationship strategies, because it's helped us communicate a lot. And of course, we human, I lose my, what, every now and then, but not for long, because I find my way back home so fast. It feels too good. And these are like, these are spiritual speed bumps or guideposts. It's like when I'm feeling crap, it's like I think of it as a yield sign, or there's a yellow light or a red light, and it's time to come back to the breath, and humming is a big part of it. But heart touching is another thing that I do, because it seems so simple, and it is. But I encourage people not to dismiss this as being too simplistic, because often the most simple of things are the most powerful. We dismiss them because we think, oh, we've been taught to believe that things have to be a struggle. And it doesn't. Life does not have to be a struggle.
That's right. Life does not have to be a struggle, ladies and gentlemen. And practicing these things, it can alleviate that struggle, y'all. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Liquor Talk. The more you drink, the better we sound. You never know who's going to come on and have a drink, ladies and gentlemen. We talking about humming and meditation, y'all. This is how we're starting 2026, because 2026, it gets stressful. So I definitely feel this. I feel like people need to hear this. Like, so how your stress management process is unique from many others that also teach meditation and stress management,
Right.
because there are others who they be teaching different methods and stuff, and then you got people that their meditation, their stress reliever is go hit a bar or go hit the strip club, so
Hey, and no judgment. No judgment for me. I say wherever you are is where you are. I know that's very profound. But here's the thing. I really don't have any judgment. I've been through all kinds of things in my life, and I have no regrets. I've learned from everything, as long as I believe we come from kindness, and let people be, even if you disagree with them, as long as they're not hurting themselves or another. I'm never to condone abuse. Never to condone abuse. The way, as I said earlier, it's different is my stuff is in between. There's so many geniuses who teach, meditation. There's so many so-called sages, who, and forget them, just like some great people, great teachers of many stress management processes that I just like adore and I'm so grateful for. Mine are what, as I said, are called the in-betweeners. They're portable, they're fast and fun. And so it's like, if you're stuck in traffic, if you're home and your kids are making you nuts, if you can even just get away into the bathroom, into your car for 2 minutes, these together, if you got to give yourself a good scream, get angry, punch a pillow for a while, if you're feeling depressed, it is a wonderful stage to get your anger out in a focused way, not to live there, but as a stepping stone. But what my techniques, hacks, whatever you want to call them, do that's different is it's the in-between stuff. It's in between meditation. Sometimes you don't have time, but again, you practice these a few minutes every day. They will be addictive, because you'll see how good you feel when you're connected to the vibration and sound. Just the vibration that you feel, you all of a sudden realize, this is where I live. I am love. Our heart, the electromagnetic field around our heart is massive. And if you touch your heart and you breathe in through your nose, as I explained earlier, and hold your breath and hum while you're touching your heart, and you repeat, I am love, I live here. And you feel the vibration when you're exhaling on the word home, in your cheekbones, in your spine, in your rib cage, in your nose, in your jaw. You realize, this is where I live. And, this is not the world around me. It does not have to inhabit me in a way that's invasive. And so many of us still allow that because we, again, as we started out talking, care more about other people's evaluation. And though they're mostly walking around thinking, what are they thinking of me? And other people are going like, well, what are they thinking of me? So it's such a lost bit of energy that can be used for what I believe we're all geniuses in our own right, whatever it is, to use that, to harness that energy and allow ourselves to just like be the love that we are, man. And so that at the end of our lives, we don't have the regret that palliative care workers unilaterally talk about, which is that so many people live with that regret at the end of their lives. I wish I hadn't cared so much what other people thought of me because I would have done so much more. Who wants that? To me, that's the saddest thing.
Yes, who wants that? And y'all gotta live life with no regrets, y'all, no matter what, because everything does happen for a reason. I've had to tell myself that too. You're in a situation for a reason. The reason might not come out right away, but eventually when it does, you'll definitely be happy. So going back to your book, so what inspired you to create your new audiobook?
Well, a lot of people were like, Frannie, I want to read your, look, my book did really well. And, kudos to my publisher, Mosaic, and all that. It was like third most popular, he said, at the Frankfurt Book Fair, which I didn't even know what it was. It was the largest, I think, book fair, in the world. Need to hydrate. Most of us are radically dehydrated. Liquor talk. I love it.
Yes, that's true.
Well, with your, with your martini, man, a little bit of water, good stuff, even with coffee. But anyway, the reason is a lot of people like me are lazy. We're also into the quick fix, especially with the internet and AI and everything. And, to sit down and read a hard copy or online book, it takes a certain focus. Whereas if you're rocking, your life and you're doing your thing and you're in the car, or whatever, you can listen to an audiobook. It's just more practical time wise, right? That's just the truth. And I get it. And so a lot of people wanted that, but I really didn't want to go back in the stories. I said, I'd done it. I had quite a lot of success with it, with my work. I got keys to the cities. I got mayoral proclamations. I was invited to the Capitol in 2001. Somebody showed me that through the window. That's where Monica did her thing, Monica Lewinsky, right? I mean, so I had a certain,
Wow.
for sure. That was a senator who said that, no names mentioned. But anyway, so I just want to say, I did a lot with it. I had no need to go back in. Yeah. A lot of people were like, I know that book, blah, blah. And I have had my plays published, the Waltonsteins, and my book online's Confessions of a Jewish Shiksa, but I'm not trying to sell it. The reason I'm going to the audiobook is because it's substantial to me to talk about how everything was a gift. Because so many of my clients, followers, and audience members say, if my parents had been different, my life would have been better. And yeah, okay, maybe. But what a waste of energy. Instead of, what about like people like Nick or the Tony Robbins of the world? Or there's so many, you look at what you're doing with your podcast. Hello, you're a hero. I mean, you're doing it. And so many people are just sitting there, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm not qualified. That's why I'm doing it, because you will hear, and I'll be happy to gift you with a book when it comes out, which should be very soon, that, I've lived life. I've had a colorful life. I'm not pretending to be something that I'm not. I tried to be normal, but it was taken. You know what I mean? And that is not I did this because excuse. We all do the best we can. I don't believe the majority. There are some people who are definitely malicious. The majority of people, if they knew better, they would have done better. Even some of the worst things, they did the best they could at the time, and it was the path of least resistance. But I mean, I'm not saying I've done, the worst of the worst. I haven't, but I'm just what I wanted to write this book to say, look, my childhood was not, Little House on the Prairie. I don't know if you remember that
Yeah,
show.
I remember A Little House on the Prairie.
Right. Right. Yeah, but it was actually really good that it wasn't, because I learned so much, and I love my life now. It's imperfectly perfect, but I get to teach this stuff. I get to share this stuff, and it excites people and it helps them, and I love adding value to people, and hearing, getting texts from people where it's really been life changing, because they don't all people we don't always have time to go, and you can get a great, and your endorphins going and an adrenaline rush to go and work out, but what do you do when that simmers down and you're at home and you have to navigate, some challenging times, maybe in your family, or whatever's going on in your life financially? It doesn't matter. There, we don't have to suffer. I mean, suffering is optional, right? But we don't know that, and I didn't, and that's why I want to inspire people to these practices, which I share in the book, and I point people to where they can learn them for free. I also have, I teach workshops to paramedics and all kinds of different things as well, paid stuff. But I put a lot of free stuff out there, because wow, what a world would it be, right? If we all knew how to deal with our cuckapoo, there'd be a lot more kindness, because when you feel better, you don't want to hurt somebody. You don't want, you stop judging people, because when we realize that we have the authority, we have the agency for our own voice, and and to create what we want, and we're much happier. We stop wanting to control other people. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's why.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And and I hear you said not to be hurtful anymore. So on the opposite of hurtful, so I guess you could say being playful is big in your work. So does that tie into you being playful all the time? Because it says you're playful when it
Well,
comes to your work.
yeah, and when I say playful, not like I don't do stand up anymore. Playful is like, for many of the workshops I've taught over the years, were like inner child stuff. So I would literally get people to, do silly stuff, and get in touch with kind of clowning. And boy, they say that, I think that the most scary thing for people to do is to be public speakers and stand up comedians and all of that. It because exactly for these reasons. The playful inner child stuff is, first of all, it's so healthy. Do you know that there was a doctor named Dr. Bernie Siegel in the 70s? And you can look this up. This is all over, whatever, Google, DuckDuckGo, whatever you use, or AI, that he was a cancer doctor. He healed, he allowed, because we don't heal each other. He allowed his patients to heal themselves by prescribing only comedy and humor. That's it. They went home. They were only allowed to watch funny shows. Dr. Bernie Siegel, check it out if anyone's listening. Funny shows, read funny books, do funny things, and there was a massive amount of healing that happened as a result of that. Being in touch with our playful side, we're so inundated with bad news, and I'm not saying we shouldn't dip our fingers in and see what's going on, but most people live there, and it infects, it's insidious, and it shuts us down. So whatever we can do to be goofy and playful. Another thing that I lead now is something called, it's like Zumba with a twist, that I call Shmoomba. And so while we're doing these different kind of dance moves, I incorporate, okay, for example, I'll share another process with you. I got to hydrate.
Mhm.
How do you know this isn't pure vodka? I guess since this is liquor talk, that would be acceptable.
Now, yeah, because we don't know, because we're virtual right now. Now, if we're in person, that'd be a different story.
That's true. But I want to tell you this one thing, for example, that I teach. Okay, it's called a complain orgasm, and the reason that I'm taking the word
A
orgasm
complaint
and make
orgasm.
yes, it's not an actual. There's nothing sexual about it, but because of the pornographization of sexuality, I like to put silliness back into it, and spirituality, because I think that's, look at, how did we come into the world? Hello, you know what I mean? There is
Yeah.
something deeply spiritual about that, and the whole kind of men should look this way and women should look this way and people should look that way. That thing is I'm why I call many processes orgasmic or orgasm, because I believe it's the true joy of creation. And so I have something called the complaint orgasm. Okay, this is part of the inner child stuff that I do when I'm teaching these shmoomba classes, but also other types of complaint orgasm. What is it? Funny you should ask. Okay, so what it is like, okay, let's say something is really getting our goat. We're like so freaking annoyed, right? We just want to like, right? And so that's hard on the body to hold that for more than a few minutes. Anger, all of those are augmented emotions. Being angry for extended periods of time, feeling ashamed, feeling guilty, all those kind of lower vibes, that's actually hurting us. Dis-ease, right? Lack of ease. So uh, what I do with this complaint orgasm is we have like a virtual make-believe bowl, like a right here, okay, that you have here. And I get people to move their hands because when you're moving your physiology, it's a much easier way to change your mind from feeling I'm so angry, I want to kill them, and you're holding this in the body. How could they have cut me off? Okay, well, you'll have to pull over to the side of the road to do this. You can't do this when you're right. Your hands are supposed to be on the steering wheel, but like whatever, how could she have said that? Whatever, or watching the news, or oh my goodness, whatever. So you've got this thing, you do this, and you're thinking about the thing. Let yourself think about the thing that's bugging you, and you move your hands and you do this like kids do. Okay. And you pretend you're vomiting your complaints into a mime or a make believe, a virtual bowl. So you like this. It's complaint orgasm. And you put in the bowl, right? It makes you laugh. And you take the bowl and you pretend to throw it in the toilet or the ocean, and you make a sound like a whoosh, and it feels so good. So my husband and I, Danny, we actually share this with people. We lead workshops and stuff, because if he's annoyed with me, and you may find that hard to believe because I know you think I'm perfect, right? But right, we all annoy each other every now and then. This is a great way, because you realize, like, what a waste of life. It's not that you don't broach subjects and deal with issues, for sure, but this is so that is like, inner child stuff, silly stuff, being playful. We don't have to suffer just because we're annoyed. It's about being creative, right? So these are creative, very fast, very portable, and proven. Hello, science backed. You're changing the chemicals in your body. And people heal themselves from so many different things by letting go of pushing stress and dark feelings into their bodies. And we're all atomically connected. If I'm walking around like, a cranky person that just wants to dump, it's affecting people around me. Are you familiar with, is it Dr. Emoto's water experiments? They're on YouTube. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I've heard of them, but somebody mentioned to me. I was like, Doctor who?
Right. I see. Okay, let's pretend we know how to pronounce it. Dr. Yamoto or Omoto. He's a Japanese doctor. So what he did, and this speaks to this work. He took water molecules, and he had different people exhibit different emotions to the different water molecules. So he had some people that were angry, some people that were sad, some people that were happy, some people that were loving. And on each vessel where the water was, he wrote what the emotion was. So check this out. Then he froze them, and under a microscope, you can see this on YouTube. He examines the frozen water molecules. The ones that were angry or bitter or low vibe were ugly. The ones that were full of love or joy or peace or sweetness were beautiful. And we are all connected. So, our emotions, and our mind, our thoughts, our emotions, and all that have so much more impact on the creation of who we are and what we're able to do in our bodies. We're only in these bodies for so long, in each, whatever, if you believe in reincarnation, I happen to, for as long as we are alive at this time in this body. So we might as well celebrate, our lives the best we can, without suffering as much as, and it's very easy to say, when somebody is feeling physically bad, it's very hard to, cheer up. They want to, like, kick the person in the shins. I wouldn't, say that to somebody but you can be hopeful. You can find ways to reach for feeling better, a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And that's how I healed myself from, different cancers and PTSD and you name it. By, yes, I changed diet and I changed, what I put on my body and in my body. But I'm telling you, for me, and so many of my followers, and we happen to have an energy wellness center, by the way, in North Palm Beach. So we have a lot of clients. It's scalar energy, like Nikola Tesla energy, but it's not just going into the energy. It's what are you bringing in? What's your consciousness? And there's so much scientific data to back this now. There's an institute called the Heart Map Institute. Now, again, this is all available online, which has so much data about the electromagnetic field around the heart and how powerful we are to create from our heart.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's definitely amazing work. We definitely got to check it out. I guess when I visit Palm Beach, I'm gonna have to check out this Energy Healing Center.
You better come as my guest. I would be honored to have you there.
Hey, I'd be honored to be there. We gotta definitely set it up. So why should people buy your book when it comes out?
I really think that they'd have an interesting journey. We all have our stories. I happen to have a pretty wild one. I talked quite a bit about it earlier. I'm not going to get back into the whole, through line of the story, but the points beyond it being a true memoir, I highlight what I was able to do with some of the darkest parts of my experiences, my childhood, and how I was able to utilize that and make it into something that could serve me and others. And that brings me joy. And so I want to inspire that. And people might be like, oh, you don't know what I went through. It was way worse. Well, I'm not talking about anybody else's journey. I'm only speaking about my own. And if I can inspire one person, that's enough. And then, of course, I am, allowing people to find a lot of my stuff online, my free stuff, which are these powerful processes that are so simple and so practical and portable and science backed. We have the data, and there's like hundreds and hundreds of testimonials of people who've used them. So sometimes the simplest things are the most powerful, and let's not dismiss them. And that's why I tried to be normal, but it was taken. Buy it. It'll be on ACX if you want to. And, if not, you can just, I never want to make money an issue. Like, people can always find me and, enjoy my work and follow me, all over the net. And FrannieSheridan.com is my website, so whatever people want to do, just, as far as I'm concerned, donating your time to listen to this wonderful podcast is a huge donation. So, I'm not, whatever people want to do. I like to exchange, money sometimes for different things because of the, I believe that's how it flows. Sometimes I just want to be there to support people, and it's just as rich, so there's, it's there if people want.
That's right. That's right. Y'all go out and buy this book. Go out and support this lady. Thank you, Frannie. What is your call to action for the people out there listening to this podcast?
Have another drink and listen to your podcast. No, let me see. Well, there's nothing wrong with a good drinky poo. Let's see.
That's right.
Call to action: be kinder to yourselves. Be kinder to yourselves. Be kinder to yourself. And it's not an easy thing to do when you feel so down on yourself. But whatever you can do to find your way back home, I believe, whatever you want to call it, God, Goddessa, the light, the big blueberry pie in the sky, we're all, as I believe, Frannie Sheridan's belief, just my belief, from the unified field of love. We're all from the unified field of love. And I don't believe that we are meant to suffer. I believe that the light, my belief is we came in, we decided to co-create, come into this, our blessed and perfectly perfect bodies with imperfect speech, because we wanted to realize, we wanted to deal with the so-called contrast or whatever happens on this planet, these issues, so that we could expand reality. We could bring in more light. So the more that we can find our way back to the love and the light and the whatever, all this good stuff that we all are. I believe everybody. I've worked with children of perpetrators and I children of survivors and from international genocide. That's also been a part of my work over the years. It's not what I do now. People do better when they know better. And if you've been brought up with with abuse and all of that, it's hard to find a way home. But wherever you are, be kind to yourself, because the kinder and the more gentle you can be with self, the more we can have a kinder world. And I want people to be, to find their way to as much joy as they can. I don't think we are necessarily ever going to have a world where there's no war, but we can definitely have a lot less, so that we can allow people to be who they are as long as they're being kind to themselves, and even if we disagree with it.
Of course, of course. Well, Frannie, I want to thank you for blessing the Liquor Talk with your presence. And I want to thank us people at Podmatch for blessing us with this wonderful guest. Shout out to everybody that's on Podmatch right now. Talking about people on Podmatch, come on down. Shout out to everybody on Podmatch. Shout out to everybody that's tuned into this episode. Frannie, I want to thank you for blessing the Liquor Talk with your presence. How can the people get in touch with you?
I just want to thank you. I love your presence. You're so authentic. You're so you. And I just, taking the time to interview me, bless you. People can find me at FrannieSheridan.com, FrannieSheridan.com. I'm live on Facebook almost every week, if not every week, 12 noon EST at Frannie Sheridan on Facebook, and on TikTok at the real Frannie Sheridan, because I don't want the fake one to take over. And, because there are a lot of clones and stuff. But for now, that's enough, I think. And then you can, find my book, should be out in a couple weeks. I was going to share a link where people can join my list if they want, so I can let them know when the book's out. But that's totally up to you. It's, if that's something you want to do. But that's it. And I just want to send so much love to everyone. I think this is going to be a great year.
Yes, 2026 is going to be a great year. It definitely is. And thank you, Frannie, once again. And thank you to listeners, whether you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts at. Be sure to check in with us at the Liquor Talk Podcast. Until the next episode, peace, ladies and gentlemen.